I wonder if he really wants to go down there.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
I mean, seriously, you know, losing David Cicilline, he's probably pretty happy that he's not down there. Although, you know what, he likes the action. I bet you he's wishing he was in the middle of it. And it is kind of a shame that we didn't have a vote in the 1st Congressional District when it came to this unprecedented vacating of the House Speaker's seat. Nice to have you in. Thanks very much for tuning in to My State of Mind. The guy who won the Democratic primary and who is most likely to end up in Washington is my guest tonight, Gabe Amo, who, of course, won the primary a few weeks back, and it was a big night, as it always is.
I ran for Congress because I believe Rhode Islanders deserve someone who can be effective from day one.
From day one. Well, are you happy or are you sad that day one is not today?
Look, I want to get to work for people of the 1st Congressional District as soon as I can, but I take seriously a general election in several weeks, 4 weeks and 5 days to be exact, and I'm going to work really hard to earn every single vote that I can so that I can get to work as soon as possible.
All right. Over the course of your first term or two, I'm going to see if I can knock out all the cliche answers because you've done a lot of, and I know you're authentic. It's just that you're so careful. I was joking about the show. You know, we have a word for it that we can't use on the broadcast. The show, the circus that's going on down there in Washington. Why don't we save that for the next segment? It will, and because I just think it is. I mean, it's an untenable governing situation. But talk to me about the victory. Let's not.
Yes,
we haven't had a chance on this forum. We talked on the radio, but we didn't have a chance to discuss your accomplishment and, you know, your, I think, well-timed sprint at the end that gave you the victory. You know, I've talked to the analysts about it, but not you directly. Pretty sharp move, I think, the week or two before the primary day to issue a poll that says, I'm second and coming. Was that the thought?
Well, we could feel the momentum on the ground. To be completely honest with you, I was knocking on a lot of doors, seeing people at events. They were saying that they were supportive of our campaign. But unless you have numbers, some of that isn't real. So we did what you do. You put a poll out. You know, at that juncture, to spend the money on the poll was a strategic decision. And then also to put the poll out, because what I needed to make clear is that yes, I had more than a chance, and I was a really good alternative as a common sense, solutions-oriented Democrat who could win the election. And that's why I put it out, because I needed to crystallize that for people across the state. And you saw from that poll to the final result, people come to me in a pretty large number, decisively, 16 of the 19 cities and towns in the district, and winning certain communities with a majority, 51% in Barrington, 40 plus in Newport. You name it, we performed well above a lot of what the prognosticators put forward.
Yeah, well, you know, again, you know, the prognosticators in the race are people like me, you know, and others, maybe some Washington look-see, but for the most part, I think Washington was pretty much comforted by the idea that this is a Democratic seat. And the nature of the special election is really nothing but gut check analysis, really, because media outlets don't spend their hard-earned revenue to expense polling. It's hard to poll a special election. The turnout was a little higher on the upper edge of what everybody predicted, but about what it was supposed to be. That definitely benefited you. But they're hard races to predict. And the number of candidates made it even more difficult. But it is, in retrospect, maybe it'll be more retrospective back to November. But it was kind of a soap opera. The race.
I think there were points.
The race
certainly
was kind of a soap opera,
Yeah.
wasn't it? You have Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos, alleging that she's a front-running leader. 8 weeks in front of the primary, with a number that was negligible but leading. 20 to Aaron Regenberg's 9,
And I was at 3.
and you were at 3. Goes to show you that when people ask why are you in this race when you have such a little number at the beginning of a race, it goes to show you that, as Joe Fleming tells us all the time, the top pollster in the state, that it's only a snapshot. And it was the ultimate race, right, of people not paying attention to it early.
Yeah.
You must have found that out on the street.
Oh, I found that out. Definitely. People
Gabe
didn't even
Amo
know there
running
was
for
an election.
Congress. Who and what?
Yeah, there's an election, but it was a testament to a lot of strategies. I spent a lot of time out in the community, on the doors, at events, and then we were on TV. We had ads that delivered a clear message, the same message that I delivered when I got into the race on April 18th, basically same message at the end. And so as people saw more of my face, they said, oh, you're that guy. You're the happy guy who worked for the presidents who wants to serve us in Congress. And as soon as people started to identify who I was and what I was about, that's when we started to trend. And then they peeled back a little bit more and learned about me, learned about my parents, learned about my education, learned about my values. And so it's a process of discovery. Someone I spoke to very early in this said, Gabe, you're going to work really hard, but it all comes down to the last 2 weeks. And in effect, basically this last month of this campaign became what created the opportunity for me to be successful.
Right. So you get Matos, who falls into her little dilemma with signatures, yet to be formally resolved, but for all intents and purposes cost her the election. I'm not sure that the violation was significant enough for her to lose the elections. How she handled it. Then you get a affluent candidate from Jamestown who runs into a story, a Target 12 victim. You got Aaron Regenberg, who caps out at what is a projected 25%, and then you come on with your poll and with this feeling of down the stretch we come, and obviously the television advertising helps significantly. You talk about an alternative choice. You mean alternative to the progressive Regenberg?
To Aaron, because I think in many ways it became a two-way race.
Yeah. From Pawtucket. You and she were kind of viewed, and as I wrote in the Valley Breeze column, you had money, she didn't. Game over.
I think it was partially that, but I also think I spent a lot of time in a lot of parts of the district, right? So we talked about the Blackstone Valley being an area of importance. I grew up in Pawtucket. The Blackstone Valley means a lot to me, and we did well there. I also did well in the East Bay. I spent my time across the district. I knew that I wasn't going to win because of one particular community and just surging in one place. I had to, because I've never held office before, didn't start with a specific geographic base. I started with people who I needed to tell that there was an election happening and have them learn about me. And I think that, as you saw in the results, was helpful to our strategy.
I think there was a lot of Pawtucket kid done good type of feeling. I think your ads were crafted in a way that told a nice story. What did you spend? $750,000-ish?
Yes, a little less than that. I think I raised.
Remind me where you got it all.
So a range of places, right? I have got it from a lot of Rhode Islanders. I don't have the ratio breakdown, but folks who I've known through the years involved in politics. Remember, I started working in politics as an 18-year-old as a field organizer for Sheldon Whitehouse, all the way to working for Governor Raimondo and working for 2 presidents. So when you do that, you meet a lot of people from college, people from my time at Oxford, people from campaigns. So I called basically everybody who was in my phone. And I called a lot of people who knew those people. And that was all important for me to build up what is sometimes a little too expensive for people to chase, resources to be successful.
So give me your most, give me the quickest thought you have on what people were saying at the door when you knocked on it.
Experience and...
No, what were they saying about the current status of political life? What were they saying about what they expected from a congressperson?
A lot of people disheartened with the process, with politics
They
today.
Articulate that?
Completely.
Unsolicitedly?
Unsolicited. Said, we don't know whether people in Washington are working for us. Moreover, we also want people in Washington to be rooted in our community here. They also asked very often, about a niche issue, right, that was important to their lives. And I think it's less about what the answer is and more about the commitment to learning more and then going to do the work later. And so I heard a range of responses, but people were excited that they had a new face. That was something I heard often. But they also were excited that someone with
Did
experience.
you have to tell them that Cicilline left?
No.
Most people?
I think most people knew. I think that made a lot of news. So that wasn't necessarily news. They just may not have known when. Right? Because when I entered this race, he was still in the seat when I got in on April 18th.
Right.
And so, people have busy lives. They have things going on that aren't just politics. They aren't all sort of people who are chasing the political news every day.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, when we come back, speaking of the political news, it's been pretty torrid, don't you think? We'll talk about it. Stay with us. So yeah, I'm only half joking about whether anybody would want to go down and serve right now in the House of Representatives. Unless you've been sleeping under a rock, you've seen this news, right? I'm not exactly sure how many folks really understand the minutia of this, but here's a package to kind of give you some insight.
Just days after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy was ousted, two top Republicans, Louisiana Congressman and Majority Leader Steve Scalise and Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, announced bids to replace him.
We need to unite the conference. I think I can do that.
Well, they're two good friends. They both would do great job.
McCarthy has said he won't run, though others could jump in before next week's votes. Now, some angry House Republicans are expressing their frustrations with Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, leader of the charge against McCarthy, and the 7 GOP lawmakers who joined to vote him out.
He's the arsonist who lit the house on fire.
Gaetz faces the possibility of being kicked out of the party. All 8 may possibly be kicked off committees.
Though Gaetz is not backing down.
The nerve of these establishment Republicans to have to take a week to go have a good cry and then blame us for being the reason that we can't get the work done.
North Carolina Congressman Patrick McHenry is in as interim speaker, but the House is at a standstill until it elects a new speaker, with another possible shutdown looming if Congress doesn't act by November 17th.
We cannot and should not again be faced with an 11th hour decision. Brinksmanship threatens to shut down the government.
Yesterday, President Biden called for an end to the poisonous atmosphere in Washington.
And when he's asked what his thought was for a leader, he said it was above my pay grade and walked out the door. You sure you want to go down in that whole environment down there?
Well, we got a lot of stuff to clean up. I mean, it's not going to happen immediately,
right.
But I think this is a time for principled leaders from every congressional district. So, but it's sad, Dan, in all honesty. Like, this is not good to share both with our allies abroad, but also people who have questions about whether our democracy can function. We have a whole branch of government that is functionally disabled right now. It's terrible.
Seth Magaziner, our 2nd District Congressman, was able to talk to me on the radio that afternoon at 5 o'clock and spend about 10 minutes with me. I hope you'll be, if you win, be as accessible as he's promised to do and made good on it. Kind of gave us a raw play-by-play of the environment down there. This Matt Gaetz, he may be villainous, but he is very irrepressible and talented at stirring the pot would be the understatement. Yeah. I mean, kid's ruthless. Yeah. He'll crash and burn. Who's going to get him? The Republicans will get him themselves?
Well, I think they have to. I mean, here's the thing. It's not.
And my question is probably an unclear one. Get him how?
I think it starts with the rule changes. He was empowered, and for folks who don't know the arcane rules of the Congress, he was empowered by it only taking one vote or one member to call for a vote for a motion to vacate, to essentially call into question the leadership of the Republican leader at any point. That's a really empowering thing for one person. And so that's because Speaker McCarthy and lots of segments of that party are listening to the fringe extreme and letting them dictate. And this is not political talking points. It literally played out just now.
Well, they had to allow for the rule back in January when there was 15 votes. I mean, it was 2 o'clock in the morning for those of us who were junkied enough to watch that whole thing. I mean, there were handshake deals being made on the floor regarding rules like this. Although the rule has been on and up and back and forth. It's not a constitutional mandate that
No.
be in place. It is a House rule.
Yeah.
So it's a condition of their current working environment. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I never thought that one person. I mean, if some gadfly decides to say, I think the speaker's got to go, I want to put it to a vote, it gets voted down 434 to 1, oh well.
Yeah.
But it was a reflection of the teetering problem that he had going in.
Yeah, I mean, but this is the problem with paying attention to the extremes and leaning in, is that there was no lifeline. Democrats couldn't do it. This is picking the Republican leaders.
Well, I disagree. Democrats could have done it.
They could have, but here's the thing.
done
But
it.
if you aren't a person of principle and hold to your word, right? He keeps going because Speaker McCarthy went back on every deal.
And he's still blaming Democrats.
And it is his party that is unruly.
Yeah.
The Democrats' House is in order.
Yeah. I wonder, though, if stability would have been more important for the Democrats to say, hey, listen, guys, nobody have it home at dinner either, but we don't need this tumult.
Yeah, well, the best ability to demonstrate is winning the 5 seats we need plus some, and demonstrating to the American people that Democrats can run government. Now, the unfortunate part is that we're on the brink of a shutdown again, right? And I don't think this gets communicated often, but it's the janitor who works in the government building who's not getting paid or back pay that is going to suffer. That veteran, that person in the military not getting their
somebody's
paycheck.
got a Social Security question.
Yeah, and this is real
Yeah.
stuff. But instead, we're mired in talking about who gets to be the leader of the Republican Party, a crew with no leader and, frankly, no principles to get up out of this and try to actually govern for the American people. It's sad, and I don't think it's a talking point to say that we need better. I don't know if they can do it on their own. And so Democrats are going to have to figure out how we can continue to govern. It's certainly in partnership with the Senate and the White House so that we're not stuck in this quagmire, because it doesn't look like they're going to solve this next week. They said they're going to solve it next Wednesday. It doesn't look pretty.
You going to get an office if you weren't down there?
I don't know.
Nancy Pelosi doesn't have one.
Hopefully, the speaker doesn't decide.
Nancy Pelosi is in a what do you call it?
They got rid of her hideaway space in the Capitol, so
Yeah,
they
I
moved her
mean,
to another office.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right, but there is a race here, and we'll talk about it when we come back, Stephen.
It is unfortunate that my opponent is following the same old partisan playbook of hiding from debates. I cannot speak of his motives, but I assume his lack of an economic plan or vision for Rhode Island has led him to run solely on his political appointments, where he served as a cheerleader for the policies that are crippling Rhode Island families.
See what you get when you don't schedule a half a dozen debates and just go through the motions. See what you get. I mean, the logic is silly. But you cause your own problems. You're going to do a Channel 12 debate on Newsmakers with Tim and Ted, not primetime Newsmakers, which has still got a cumulative audience of significance. And then Channel 10 has figured something out, right?
Yeah, we'll be live on November 2nd.
Okay. Why not just go through the kind of shortened timetable version of what you did during the primary season? Do the community stuff. What?
Dan, I've been running a vigorous and very visible campaign since April 18th. I've been out there. I've talked to people in so many settings.
Now you got a new race. It's a general election.
Well, it's a continuation of the same race. So people know where I stand. I've been on your radio show. I've been in a lot of community events.
In the same way that we agree that there was kind of a naivete amongst the electorate for this race, the primary race, there's still a naivete in the general special election will be a low turnout general special election as well. Dude, you'd have to rob a bank to lose this race. So why not just do the things that, one of the things that people were saying about your win, including me on a text the night of your election, was sometimes good guys finish first. You've got all this goodwill. Why kick it away because some consultants or somebody in your brain trust is saying, don't give this guy any oxygen. Do as little as you possibly can, and let's just kick this thing through to November. Why not just take this general election opportunity to do the same on the ground work? Be visible, take the hits, have the debates, show yourself to be bigger than just political strategy.
Yeah, I think my strategy has been to be connected to Rhode Islanders in a myriad of venues. Dan, I will be.
I'm talking about meeting your opponent the old-fashioned way, other than a couple semi-hidden broadcasts.
I don't think they'll be hidden. I think 7
that's
p.m.
no reflection on the shows. Even if you did mine, you want to come do mine with Gary Leonard? I didn't even ask. You want to sit with him?
I think I've got 2 really great opportunities to be out there talking to voters and meeting and having my opponent answer why he wants to stand with Kevin McCarthy.
How many debates on the ground and broadcast did you do in the primary?
Oh, I don't know the exact number. I think it was
a dozen.
I think plus or minus.
So you
2
couldn't
or 3.
You couldn't have done half of it. A couple of community things, a public radio thing, a podcast with Bartholomew, a couple of. Look, I just think that you got a chance to present an authenticity that goes beyond political strategy. Well, and anybody paying attention knows you just want to hold your nose and get through these things and get out. And I think the guy has the correct complaint, perhaps for the wrong reasons. I mean, I didn't buy his logic there, but it's not good. It's not good for him.
Well, I look forward. These are 2, I think, widely viewed forums. I know that many of the people I spoke to in the primary, they watched one debate. They watched the one on Channel 12 at 7 p.m. And so they'll have multiple opportunities to see me talk about the work that we can do for Rhode Islanders, while my opponent will have to defend wanting to be in the dysfunctional House Republican majority. Like, he can explain that on the debate stage.
Did you see the smile on his face when he said that? You should enjoy and embrace and extend your debate schedule. That's my final word on it. I've been pretty clear. But congratulations on the
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Good luck in this not so close general election. And if you really want to go down there, God bless you. We need some good representation.
I can't wait to work for you and all the people across the 1st District.
Final word, Gabe. Listen, in this particular district, it really does take a train wreck of enormous proportion for a Democrat to lose. The election was won for the most part in the primary. Let's not kid ourselves. But look, being on the ground and mixing up with your opponent is the sportsmanship that I think is required. I wish Gabe Amo success in the general. He'll likely win. See ya.